number 10, we have Captain America. I know it feels weird to have Cap in the 10th spot on any list about power, but remember who he's up against. Captain America's best trait is his unmatched leadership stat, which for superheroes is a really important angle to consider. But on a list about individual power, I'd say it only goes as far as who he's actually leading and ultimately fighting alongside. But without his strategic advantage, Captain America is still an extremely powerful Avenger and beats out plenty of other contenders that didn't make the list. The combination of his impressive fighting skill and his advanced strength levels is good enough to garner attention, but of course his vibranium shield is what really brings him to another level. Vibranium is a metal that actually absorbs all energy and contains it entirely. This means that whatever the shield is hit with, the metal itself will absorb the recoil almost entirely. Not to mention, it can pack a serious punch when it's thrown and will return to Steve's hand on command. This gives Cap a huge offensive and long-range advantage when he isn't showing off his massively impressive hand-to-hand combat skills. At number 9 is the one and only Spider-Man. It was tough to decide where to put Spidey on this list because he's so versatile, but he's also quite young and inexperienced. Well, at least he's supposed to be. But what really puts him at one ranking higher than the almighty Captain America are his Spidey senses and his healing factor. These two abilities really give Spidey the edge and help to define him as a more agile and crafty hero than many of the others on the list. Where Spider-Man might lack in sheer power, he makes up for in his adept precision and dexterity. And while he may not pack a huge punch in some of the more advanced combat situations that the Avengers face, he doesn't let anyone get the jump on him in any case, because he can always sense what's coming and has very quick reflexes to make the next move before his opponents even realize they've missed him. In other words, Spider-Man often plays the role of David while his opponents play the part of Goliath. Another thing that's important to note is that his suit upgrades allow him to gain huge strength boosts, expanding his power levels to a level that may never see its limit. At number 8, I'm putting Wolverine. As the most published comic book superhero ever, Wolverine has had the most experience out of anyone on this list. Not just because of all the things he's done, but also because of all the years that he has lived. His healing factor is so impressive that his age is extended by a great margin, making him appear nearly immortal. In fact, there have been a few times where Wolverine was entirely reduced to his adamantium-coated skeleton, and he was still walking around as if he'd just been a little banged up. But on top of his durability, he's also one of the most balanced heroes all around, which makes him a huge contender on a list about power. He's extremely agile, being quite skilled in acrobatics. He's got a very powerful offensive stat with his adamantium claws. He's also got a stealth stat since he's able to blend in as a civilian when his claws are retracted. He's got insane durability with his whole skeleton being coated in a metal only comparable to vibranium, and even if he takes a massive blow, his healing factor acts so fast and so efficiently that he's back to full health before he's even stood up. He's one of the big guns. At number 7, we have Shang-Chi. If this was a list of the best hand-to-hand combatants that the Avengers have ever had, I'd probably place Shang-Chi first. I mean, he trained Spider-Man for crying out loud. But to be fair, Shang-Chi's biggest strength mainly comes with his empowerment from the 10 rings. Not only do they give him superhuman strength and durability, but he's able to use the rings as weapons. He can use them as projectiles or at close range, and can shrink and enlarge them at will, making them perfect for entrapping his enemies. And on a list about power, it's also important to consider things like flight, which Shang-Chi also gets from the rings, because during any kind of battle, one's mobility tends to go a long way in how they approach their enemies. But even without the rings, Shang-Chi still finds crafty ways to show off his extreme power, like during the Infinity storyline when he uses Pym particles to grow the size of a dragon and takes it out without the help of the rings. At number 6, we have one of the most important members of the Avengers and my personal favorite, Iron Man. What could I say to try and convince you of Iron Man's placement on this list? Well, my favorite way of describing Iron Man's sheer power level is that it's technically uncapped. Tony Stark's biggest trait is his immense intellect, which shouldn't necessarily be considered on a list about power as a standalone ability. But when that intellect is able to produce the Iron Man suit, the War Machine suit, and every iteration of spider armor, as well as not to mention the Hulk Buster armor, it surely should be considered. So I say that his power potential doesn't have a ceiling only because If he's not the most powerful on this list right now, there's plenty of room for him to improve down the line with his inventions. But as he stands, he's still got his own AI system Jarvis, integrated into an all-powerful Iron Man armor which is outfitted with near endless ballistics and energy weaponry. And I'd argue that Iron Man has a certain level of omnipotence as well, because his systems are always tapped into external sources that support him in battle, like drones or even backup armor upgrades on the fly.
Number 5. Moondragon. It may come as a surprise, but Heather Douglas is actually one of the most powerful human-born telepaths in existence. She gained her power after she trained under the Shaolin monks of Titan, thanks to Thanos' father, Mentor, taking her in. Her telepathic abilities rival and surpass even those of powerful mutants like Professor X. With this power, she has been able to mentally enslave an entire planet of beings who were constantly at war with each other, bringing peace to said planet. She has been in a psionic stalemate with the Sorcerer Supreme, and she's even straight up de-lifed a clone of Thanos who, at the time, had even greater mental powers than Professor X. Her powers are so powerful in fact that they can maintain themselves subconsciously, meaning that even if she is unconscious, she will maintain the effects of said powers. A huge part of her character, even the reason for her awesome Moondragon name, comes from the fact that she is, or was, actually under the influence of an extremely powerful entity known as the Dragon of the Moon, who has been manipulating her for a long time, even initially letting Heather believe she had overcome the demon. But thanks to this dragon, she has been able to take on a dragon form where she could move faster than light, survive in space, and was super strong and durable. Number 4. Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of. Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid, that in a tragic comic book backstory was exposed to Jack and gave him his awesome abilities. Due to the cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts, apparently in honor of his father's love of card games, and not because it's actually his name, basically. His biological structure was reformatted to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength specifically has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. But in addition, thanks to a symbiote energy sub-device, Jack went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from the deep recesses of his brain, which is pretty cool. Number 3. Circe. Circe is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race throughout the ages. Which is similar to, but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Circe's body is augmented by cosmic energy, and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to anything which isn't stronger than the cosmic energy that augmented them in the first place. Circe has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift about 25. Her telekinesis also allows Circe to fly at about 760 miles per hour. She can project cosmic energy in heat, light, or concussive blasts. She has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools. She can teleport, but hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is a super cool ability. Those are all the powers we don't see in the Eternals movie though, because arguably the ability that she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Circe to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wishes. Number 2. Darkhawk. The coolest name for the strangest mashup of ideas. Christopher Powell was the son of a cop and a district attorney. When he witnessed his father taking a bribe from a mob boss, he stumbled upon an amulet that gave him the ability to transfer his consciousness to the Darkhawk armor. Now this ancient Shi'ar magical armor is very cool, and it gave its user quite the set of abilities. Obviously the classic superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, and reflexes are all here in excess, but the armor allowed for armament conjuration from the extra-dimensional expanse, and could manifest mutations from Chris's body at will. The armor had glider wings that allowed him to fly on air currents, but he gained an upgrade that brought his flight to interstellar distances and speeds. Chris is able to heal from even the worst of wounds by just switching back to his human body. The armor can generate force fields, generate dark energy blasts, give its user enhanced vision, and can switch to a bunch of different modes, going transparent, doubling up its armor armor and fighting with even stronger weapons. The problem for Darkhawk is that he has this very Iron Man vibe that kind of mixes with a Wolverine vibe due to his fist claws, that also mixes with a bit of a Spider-Man vibe as well, and it all just didn't really allow him to stay relevant past the 90s. And in at number 1 is Hawkeye. Okay, look, hear me out. Yes, Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in a few seconds. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible. I don't know how you train that, but there you go. He is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He is an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but listing off his abilities isn't really going to give you a proper understanding. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3 number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. In Hawkeye Volume 4 number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, fracturing his neck with a deck of cards.
At number 10 we have Sersi. A member of the Eternals, Sersi has been perfecting her craft for tens of thousands of years and has spent a decent amount of time as an Avenger. First introduced in the Eternals number 3, she ends up officially joining the Avengers in Avengers number 314. Some say she joins out of interest in protecting the world and its inhabitants from harm, but others say it's because she's in love with Captain America. Regardless, without even considering her strength yet, her invulnerability is impressive enough. It's understood that the only way to kill Sersi is by reducing her to atoms and scattering them throughout the cosmos. And on top of this is her impressive ability known as transmutation, which allows her to change the molecular structure of her targets, which is a pretty fun power. Anywhere from turning enemies into jelly to disintegrating air itself to creating sentient life out of nothing, Sersi just had to appear on this list. At number 9 is Vision. Now, if you're more familiar with the MCU than the comics, you may know Vision as more of a tragic character, but Vision is anything but that in the comics, from his power levels to his unique origin story. In Avengers number 57, Vision is still created by Ultron, but his body is formed using Horton cells to replace human anatomy, and his consciousness is made to replicate that of Wonder Man and a little bit of Alex Lipton. Then once he sets off to tear apart the Avengers, he disobeys his orders and instead joins them, becoming one of the leading members as a result. And it's quite the acquisition for the Avengers because Vision is widely considered one of the most powerful of all time. For example, that one time when he increases his density and turns himself into a meteorite to take out Nefaria in Avengers number 166, or how he proves his worthiness of Mjolnir in the MCU, which is a huge moment for any hero, especially in AI. He's also got his extremely powerful energy blasts, his incorporeal form that he can use on command, and immortality. If he isn't ever destroyed, he will basically survive as long as his parts get repaired every once in a while. And plus, he's just a very pragmatic hero, capable of using heightened intelligence to keep emotions out of every decision he makes. At number 8 we have Wonder Man. Where do we begin with this guy? Well, firstly, for those of you who don't know, Wonder Man is another case where he initially fights against the Avengers before coming around and joining them. Wonder Man is essentially immortal, having been resurrected from temporary deaths multiple times and getting stronger each time, might I add. He is an ionic powered being who doesn't age and doesn't need oxygen, food, or water to survive, but that's just speaking to his invulnerability. He's also a shapeshifter with adept teleportation and martial arts abilities. He's known to be in the 100-ton strength class, putting him up there in power levels with the Sentry, the Hulk, and Thor. Oh yeah, and he can't be infected by a symbiote, which is great news for the Avengers, who would basically be done for if that happened. Some of his more impressive feats include knocking out Hercules, Namor, and Abomination, as well as holding off the Thing, and of course taking down Ultron with his bare hands. The only thing holding Wonder Man back is his inflated ego and insecurities about his powers, as well as his somewhat vague sense of right and wrong at times, but that's not much of a downside considering how powerful this Avenger is. At number 7, we have the World Breaker himself, the Incredible Hulk. Need I expound on this one? The Hulk has always been known as one of the Avengers' most valuable assets, and even with his weakness being that he lacks control over his actions, his power level alone outbalances that shortcoming by a long shot. Besides, part of what makes the Hulk so important to the team is that he's unhinged. If he actually had a conscience, it would be argued that he wouldn't exude quite as much strength at times, considering a lot of it is confused rage induced. In Marvel Comics Presents number 52, he destroys an asteroid twice the size of Earth, he tears the fabric of reality in The Incredible Hulk number 126, and during Secret Wars he holds up a mountain range on his own to protect his fellow Avengers. And as often as he causes problems for Earth, he has also protected it from cataclysmic events many times, like the time when he prevents an earthquake with his own hands. This hero is probably the strongest on the list in terms of brute fighting strength, and if we'd made this list about 20 years ago, he'd probably be in the top 3. But these days there are just more to come that simply deliver just a little bit more than sheer brute strength. Like Hyperion, who's in our number 6 spot. Known by some as the Superman of Marvel, Hyperion has a ridiculously impressive power set and a very complex motivation for heroism. Although there are plenty of different iterations of this hero, the one most commonly known to be an Avenger originates from a recently destroyed universe. And what's more is that he has to relive this experience in his mind repeatedly due to his non-linear light-based memory. This is important to note on a list about power because it really explains why this hero puts so much into his work as a superhero, to create happier memories for him to experience in perpetuity. But an even better gauge for his powers are his feats as a hero, such as the time when he lifts Atlantis, yes the city, and destroys it single-handedly before beheading Namor in 2016 Squadron Supreme number 1. He's also got extreme speed while flying, traveling from Nevada to Sumatran and back in less than a minute. That's speed that could contend with some speedsters, and Hyperion does it while flying.
Number 5. Multiversal Masters of Evil. The Multiversal Masters of Evil were actually powerful enough to defeat the Avengers. So this one, actually the proof is in the pudding in this case. The Multiversal Masters of Evil were actually powerful enough to defeat the Avengers, or rather the Avengers of 1 million BC, aka the prehistoric Avengers, but still, even when they went back in the day, the first Avengers were still some of the most powerful people on or off the planet of Earth. So I feel like that's still really impressive. I know before, in part 1, some people in the comments wanted to know which Avengers team we were comparing these other teams to. We're like, how can you compare them if you're not telling us the parameters, Amanda? Well, you know, I don't really have a lot of time to go through the parameters, but what I will say is I'm more thinking of these teams in comparisons generally speaking. So, meaning any and all versions of the team can really be contrasted to each other. No specific parameters per se, although I am leaning more towards like classic Avengers, I guess when I'm thinking of it. These are more teams that would just be considered more powerful than at least one of the Avengers rosters. And we already know the Multiversal Masters of Evil succeeded there because they already beat the prehistoric Avengers. The Multiversal Masters of Evil are different from the standard team, and they actually include Doom Supreme, King Killmonger, Black Skull, Dark Phoenix, Ghost Goblin, and Kid Thanos. Number 4. Squadron Supreme. Squadron Supreme is kind of like Marvel's version of the Justice League. And I know what you're thinking, but wait a minute, Amanda. I thought the Avengers was like Marvel's version of the Justice League. Well, yes and no. The Avengers team doesn't really have powerhouses in the same way as the Justice League does, and Squadron Supreme kinda does that a little bit better than the Avengers does, if we're comparing. Marvel even went so far as to rename the alternate reality version of them that also appeared in 2021's Heroes Reborn event the Squadron Supreme of America. Get it? Like the Justice League of America. Their ranks typically include Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, Blur, Hyperion, and Warrior Woman or Princess Power, whatever name she's going by, aka Zarda Shelton. She goes by both depending on which version of her we're talking about. Number 3. The Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club might not be one of the first picks you have when you think of a team that can take on and defeat the Avengers, but you know me, I'm always thinking about mutants and mutant teams. And it is important to note that before the Phoenix became a member of the Avengers team, and before the the Phoenix Force was retconned to be a part of Thor's origins, it was well known for its attachment to the X-Men, and specifically one mutant in particular who was a member, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl. In fact, the Phoenix Force is an entity that was created by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum, and one of the first places where the Phoenix Force became fully unhinged was during the Phoenix's time at the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club was once a well-known villainous organization that was committed to using wealth and influence to manipulate and eventually conquer the world, sort of. Currently, the organization has been rebranded though, and presents as being a business that leans more towards heroic pursuits, but still often profitable pursuits. Number 2. Nova Corps. When you think about it, the Nova Corps, despite having been destroyed by the Universal Church of Truth, is probably one of the most powerful organizations or groups likely in the universe. Originally, they were known as Xandar's line of defense, but as they grew, they ended up expanding the area under their protection, eventually extending to the whole of the Andromeda Galaxy, and at least part of the Milky Way, as Earth also fell under their jurisdiction, where they, decided to take it under their wing. And while yes, as of Annihilation Scourge, they may be gone right now, with only Richard Rider as Nova surviving, it's more than likely that we will eventually see them return in the comics at some point. And usually when we do, they're just really powerful, so we should acknowledge that. Number 1. Elders of the Universe. The Elders of the Universe are some of the oldest beings to exist out in the universe. In fact, they are so old that in some cases their origins remain a mystery to us to this day, lost to time. They don't always work together, preferring sometimes to kind of do their own thing, but when they do end up joining forces for anything, they're also pretty unstoppable. They have worked together to take on Galactus and were for a while holders of the Infinity Stones back when they were known as the Infinity Gems in the comics. And in fact, I feel like if they came together to protect those, maybe Thanos would have never taken them? I don't know. Among the Elders of the Universe are the Challenger, the Champion Trichoslatyrus, Ego, the Living Planet, the In-Between, the Collector, the Grand Master, the Profiteer, and Lady Karina Korvac, the wife of one of the Avengers' greatest enemies, Korvac. There's also a lot more of them out there than we know, which means if they were to all assemble, it would likely be a scary time for just about everyone else in the Marvel Universe. It would be pretty scary.
Number 10. Daredevil. When Matt Murdock guilted himself into giving up Daredevil, Elektra started keeping a watchful eye over him. She starts acting as a vigilante in Hell's Kitchen to prove to Matt that she can fight without causing casualties and prove that she can train him to be the man he was meant to be. Eventually, when Matt gives himself up as Daredevil over to the police, Elektra takes over the mantle. Her first run-in with Savage Avengers was before this though. Elektra was undercover in the Hand when she followed them to the Savage Land. There, they were working with Sorcerer Kulin Gath to collect warriors to sacrifice to a primordial god. In their second adventure, Elektra is operating as Daredevil and goes into the past with this new team of Savage Avengers in a conflict with Deathlock. I'm really liking her as Daredevil so far. Her abilities and training as an assassin make her an impressive hero to say the least. Number 9. Black Widow. A former KGB agent, Natasha Alianova Romanova, better known as Natasha Romanoff, which is way easier to say, or Black Widow, was trained by the top secret Soviet brainwashing and training program, the Red Room, to become the ultimate super spy. She defected from the Soviet Union to the US to join S.H.I.E.L.D. While in the Red Room, she was bio and psychotechnologically enhanced, giving her an unusually long lifespan and prolonged, youthful appearance. In the past, she was given versions of the Super Soldier Serum, so she possesses peak level physiology, making her as strong, agile, fast, and durable as a female human can possibly be without being classified as superhuman. This also extends to her senses and immune system, which are similarly heightened to peak human levels. Black Widow is one of the top espionage operatives in the world, being one of the best information gatherers in the Marvel Universe. She's fluent in many different languages and is an expert computer programmer and hacker. She's an accomplished battle strategist and field commander and has been the leader of the Avengers and even S.H.I.E.L.D. on one occasion, so her addition to the Savage Avengers team should never be rejected. Number 8. It's Punisher. When US Marine veteran Frank Castle's family was dispatched for witnessing a mob hit, Frank vowed to avenge their deaths and become a one-man army in his personal war against crime. He became the vigilante known as the Punisher. He's quite impressive for a regular dude. Castle is in peak physical condition and is able to access and adapt to just about any situation and turn it to his advantage, using only his skills and killer instinct. He has a very high threshold for pain, able to to undergo surgery without any kind of anesthesia, and he can take multiple shots and stab wounds and continue fighting. He can even take hits from superheroes and villains with superhuman strength and just keep on going. The Punisher's reflexes are also probably some of the best of any human, able to dodge Captain America's shield and take out speedsters. Castle is also an excellent military tactician and strategist, able to create effective plans on the spot, and has repeatedly outwitted SHIELD, Hammer, and even the Avengers. He is a reconnaissance and survival expert, armorer and gunsmith, and a master martial artist and hand-to-hand combatant, while also being skilled at just about every type of firearm known to man. Frank was lured to the Savage Land where he joined with other heroes to become the Savage Avengers, when hand ninjas exhumed the body of his wife and kids. The ninjas were working for Kulan Gath, who was collecting warriors to use their blood in a ritual to raise an ancient god, as we have already said. Maybe you should have left Frank out of it though. I don't know. Number 7. Conan. Conan the Barbarian was born on a carnage-strewn battlefield in the hills of the westernmost region of Chimeria. Members of his tribe encircled Fiala, his mother, to protect her while she was giving birth to Conan. The fact that he was born on a battlefield was considered amongst the Chimerians, and by me, to be an omen that Conan would grow up to be a great warrior one day. And we weren't wrong. He was one of the most accomplished swordsmen of the Hyborian Age, and is often listed alongside King Arthur, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Zorro as one of the greatest fictional sword fighters in history, which is a really cool thing to put on a resume. Conan has unusual strength, agility, and speed for just a human guy. He has lifted immense objects or enemies, even breaking the neck of a raging bull when he was still relatively young. Conan usually relies upon his lightning-fast reflexes in combat situations, and they very rarely have failed him. Through years of dealing with sorcerers, magicians, and witches, he has even developed a moderate level of resistance to magic and mind control spells, which definitely comes in handy in the first volume of Savage Avengers. While primarily known as a wandering sellsword, Conan progressively became a master tactician, leading entire armies into battle, and eventually Conan even became king of Aquilonia. Number 6. Black Knight. Born and raised in Gloucester, Massachusetts, Dane Whitman attended university, eventually obtaining a master's degree in physics, and that's not his superpower. The descendant of a long line of heroes who took up the mantle of the mysterious Black Knight, Whitman assumed the role after his uncle Nathan Garrett, who had taken up the name as a villain, perished in a battle with Iron Man. Dane became a hero, wielding the Power Lance. He has also wielded several swords, including the Ebony Blade, a powerful but cursed weapon forged from a meteorite which is capable of cutting through almost any substance, and he's even wielded Excalibur. While holding the Ebony Blade though, Black Knight is unable to be killed, even if he loses his head or something like that. Whitman also possesses the Sword of Light and Shield of Night, bestowed upon him by the Lady of the Lake. Dane Whitman has been a member of the Avengers and leader of Ultra Force, and is now the current king of Weird World, but that hasn't stopped him from his savage avenging.
Number 5. X-Men. I mean, of course I was going to put the X-Men on this list. Y'all know me, I'm a huge mutant fan. And the premier mutant team in the comics, of course, is the X-Men. I've also loved that over the years the X-Men has become more of a global team than just necessarily an American one. Unlike the Avengers, which has tended to remain mostly American in terms of their prominent team members throughout the years. I mean, most of the people on the Avengers tend to be American, not always, but I feel like the X-Men is a little bit more global in that regard. Although they do also have a lot of American members. I mean, based in New York. It's Marvel Comics. X-Men's current and previous lineup have also been exceptionally strong, and even the OG X-Men roster featured some mutants who are still considered the most powerful even today, and who are still around of course in the comics even today. The current roster features Cyclops, Firestar, Forge, Iceman, Havoc, Magic, Jean Grey aka Marvel Girl, and Synch. Honestly, Synch is also alone just so amazing and has taken the meaning of teamwork to another level, I think. Synch. Such an underrated character that now is getting his time in the spotlight. Number 4. Eternals. The Eternals are another team that deserve more love when it comes to the comics and when it comes to their powers. They're a team made up of literal immortal beings who are extremely resistant to dying, but up until recently anyways, even if they did die, they would actually quickly return to life thanks to the machine which rebuilds and resurrects them and is integrated, or was integrated, with the planet Earth, which is actually itself a living mechanism of sorts. The Eternals recently had a killer comic series written by Kieran Gillen that I would also highly recommend you check out. This is a series that will make you a fan if you weren't already. The Eternals all also possess a unique power comparable to a powerful ability of mutant villain Apocalypse. They can manipulate and alter their own molecular structure, having complete control of it. And some, like Circe, can even manipulate matter in general, be it organic or inorganic. Number 3. God Squad. The God Squad was brought together to combat another group of gods, the Skrull Pantheon. The team made their first appearance in Incredible Hercules issue 117, but while Hercules would become their leader, they were actually brought together by Athena's command. Although she didn't serve on the team, a bunch of other super powerful individuals and gods did. With Hercules leading, their roster over time also included Thor, Circe, the Silver Surfer, Ajax, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Mikaboshi, Adam, Galactus, and Venus. The God Squad only made a few appearances, but I still think they're a super cool team, and I'm still disappointed we didn't get to see them in Thor Love and Thunder. I was kind of hoping. God Squad, but alas. Number 2. The Annihilators. The Annihilators are an insane cosmic team, and you know how I feel about the cosmic world of Marvel. It's probably one of the most powerful areas. The Annihilators first appeared in Thanos Imperative Devastation issue number 1, and were created by Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, and Miguel Sepulveda, during a time when the Guardians were getting a refresh by Abnett and Lanning in the comics. The team was actually inspired by Star-Lord himself, who had an idea for a truly badass team of galactic guardians, which Cosmo put into action. The team has featured Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Gladiator, Icon, Quasar, and Ronan the Accuser. At one point they used their powers to combine two suns together and prevented them from going supernova. So yeah, that's the power level that we're talking about. Number 1. The Defenders. I feel like the Defenders is a team that is often forgotten, but is randomly like one of the best superhero teams we've ever seen from Marvel. Perhaps this also has to do with the fact that none of its members ever really wanted to join or be there, at least not initially. The Defenders was the name given initially to the reluctant team up of the Hulk, Namor, and Doctor Strange, with Strange acting as the de facto leader of the team. Also, just having Doctor Strange as the leader of any team makes it pretty impressive, hence why the Midnight Suns are also on here. When it comes to Avengers teams, he tends to be more elusive, and even solo, he's known for being a powerhouse, so combine him with other powerhouses on a team, albeit ones, you know, in different categories like the Hulk and Namor, and you can see how this team becomes seemingly unstoppable. In fact, I feel like the fact that each of these heroes, you know, kind of has their own thing going on is what makes the Defenders so great. And they've also had a lot of other people join them throughout the years that have also been insane. As long as they all happen to be working together, the Defenders is a pretty great team, which of course, especially in the beginning, wasn't always the case. But hey, they figured it out.
Number 10. Starbrand. Starbrand isn't so much a singular person as it is a power in and of itself. Right now, the current Starbrand in the 616 universe is Brandy Selby, daughter of Suzanne Selby, who became the Starbrand after the one before her, Kevin Connor, passed away. The Avengers stepped in and had to help Suzanne deliver little Brandy, an act that caused Suzanne to pass away and attach the Starbrand to Brandy. Since Brandy's birth, she's used the Starbrand to fly and survive without oxygen and in the vacuum of space, and she can use extremely powerful energy blasts that can take down multiple people at once. But the Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that can influence human behavior to the extent that he has unified the people of his world as a single hive mind. On Earth 541, the Starbrand bearer has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedoms. Number 9. Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform Swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature, enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow. Her master of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to her two little antennae she has coming out of of her head. It doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life where she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts, form energy shields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as eternity and death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form. Number 8. Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat and was given powers tied to her costume. But that all changed when she became Tigra, mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the Cat People, which is a very silly name, but was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages. Now before you laugh at her for looking kinda silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some awesome abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons, with her leg muscles allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of where you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is the same with Tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing for night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, and her sense of smell lets her track people. More than that, she can even detect subtle alterations in the composition of perspiration that reflects mood or emotions and is highly sensitive to pheromones. Her claws and fangs can cut through steel, and like Mantis, she is an empath able to enhance and control emotions to a degree. Number 7. Monica Rambeau. With the title of Captain Marvel, it's easy to not fully understand the powers of Monica Rambeau, but they are different to her other Captain Marvel counterparts, and in my opinion, she is my favorite of the characters to take on the title. After being bombarded with extra-dimensional energy emitted by a stolen device, Monica Rambeau acquired the ability to convert her body mass into and control any form of energy of the electromagnetic spectrum. Those energy forms include visible light, radio waves, electricity, X-rays, microwaves, infrared radiation, ultraviolet radiation, cosmic rays, and gamma radiation. But whenever she comes into contact with new forms of energy, such as neutrinos, Monica can mimic that energy's wavelength as well, given enough time, and she'll be able to actually transform into it. As you can imagine, there is a lot she can do with these various forms of energy: flight, speed of light travel, intangibility, invisibility, energy blast and absorption, hologram creation and appearance alteration, size alteration, power boosting, and she can even become a kind of hard solid light. Number 6. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than him. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many more. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate Chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected the psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant power boost when he is using the 10 rings. He can use the rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and even use them to levitate and fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate energies from the rings to do many things, including projecting said energy and creating an energy-based blast. And then just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. At number 5 is Carol Danvers. Whether you love or hate Carol Danvers, there is no denying this energy-wielding superhero is an absolute powerhouse. Carol was the head of security at NASA when she was accidentally subjected to the Psyche Magnetron machine, which imprinted her with energy from Marvel's Kree negabands. This basically means she was given superhuman strength that allowed her to support the weight of a dead celestial, super stamina that lets her exert herself for 24 24 hours before getting tired, superhuman durability to withstand planet-destroying explosions, superhuman agility and reflexes that are next to instant, a regenerative healing factor that exceeds Wolverine's and can be extended to others, self-propelled flight at 3 times the speed of sound, even in the vacuum of space, and flash precognition that allows her to randomly subconsciously anticipate the moves of her opponents. But all of this is somewhat secondary to what is arguably her main power, the ability to control, absorb, and manipulate energy of a whole bunch of different kinds. This extends to let her project her spirit, manipulate molecules, and transmute matter. She can create energy constructs and even boost up her already OP abilities. And at number 4 is the Hulk. It's almost a requirement that the Hulk show up on this list. The gamma-powered Green Goliath has been around for a long time, and ever since he showed up, there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that. A strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever really reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to entire galaxies, and being able to shake the multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than ground zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. But now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually literally cannot die, coming back from the below place through green doors. Actually, in that story we even get to see an alternate future where the One Below All uses the Hulk to destroy literally everything in existence. And the Hulk is still showing more and more of his potential, with the reveal of the Titan personality that was able to fire energy blasts and is utter nightmare fuel. And at number 3 is the Scarlet Witch. As a natural conduit of one of the most powerful forms of dark magic, chaos magic, the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, is one of the most terrifyingly powerful beings in Marvel Comics. Using her chaos magic, Wanda has the very powerful ability to alter reality, which she has used to create her own children, bring the Avengers to their knees and even completely end a few of them, and even rewrite all of reality to make mutants the dominant species for a while before wiping a ton of them out. When she was born, Wanda had a natural affinity for magic. Now this was boosted up by the gift, or curse, of chaos magic given to her by Chthon, the old god of chaos, which was then boosted up again by the experiments of the High Evolutionary at Wundagore Mountain, which gave her an even deeper connection to magic. She can channel energy from other dimensions and from entities like Chthon, Sidorak, and Morrigan, and is considered to be the nexus being of the universe. Most magic users could make this list, but few of them can do what the Scarlet Witch can do. And at number 2 is Thor. Thor, Odin's son, the Asgardian god of thunder, is one of the most powerful heroes on the Avengers roster. Whenever anyone talks about Avengers level threats, one of the key elements of that is whether Thor can handle the situation alone. In both the comics and the MCU, Thor and the Hulk are repeatedly given reasons to not be able to show up so that certain storylines can actually be compelling. Specifically, I'm talking about Civil War, where Thor had to deal with Ragnarok back home on Asgard, and that was all because if he was on Earth during Civil War, whoever had him on their side would automatically win. Being the son of Odin the Allfather and Gaia, an old god, Thor has all the incredible powers of the Asgardians, but boosted to a whole other level thanks to his mom. As the god of strength as well as thunder, he is one of the strongest Marvel characters, being able to either defeat or stalemate astronomically strong beings like the Midgard Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and Hercules. His stamina lets him basically fight forever, and he's next to completely invulnerable. Not to mention his weather and energy manipulation and the use of his hammer. Even when he isn't in the possession of his hammer though, and is just Thor Odin's son, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and, especially recently, he keeps getting more and more power boosts, like when he was Rune King Thor, or now that he's Allfather Thor, which gives him the Thor Force, and he's gone even beyond that when he became the Herald of Galactus. There's a lot more to Thor, but I think I've said enough. And finally, Finally, in at number 1 is the Sentry. With the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, is not just another Marvel version of Superman. In my opinion, he is even cooler than Superman, and you can get at me in the comments for that. The Golden Sentry Serum gave Robert Reynolds more than just the highest level of strength in the universe, the ability to move and fly faster than the speed of light or just straight up teleport, and near invulnerability. The Sentry also has molecular manipulation abilities that have allowed him to defeat the Molecule Man, photokinesis which allows him to shine brighter than the sun, turn completely invisible, and produce blasts of light from his hands and eyes that could burn the Hulk's skin and level whole city blocks. He also has psionic abilities that he uses to hold himself together, implant his memories in others, erase memories, and stop the Hammer of Thor. He also has biokinesis abilities that have let him heal others, resurrect himself, reconstitute his molecules, and as the Void, give others cancer. Speaking of the Void, that is a whole other dark side to this hero that is intrinsically tied to his existence, which is not only incredibly powerful in its own right and makes the hero 10 times more interesting, but when the Sentry combined with the Void, this godlike being somehow got a huge power boost.
Number 10, Gamma Corps. Not to be confused with Gamma Flight, the space program, or the other Gamma Flight Alpha Flight training team. The Gamma Corps are actually made up of various different Gamma mutates, who basically were initially brought together to be used in hunting down the Hulk, believing him to be responsible for their fates and their mutations. They later learned, however, the truth and ended up turning on the Illuminati as a result. Team members included General Riker, their initial leader, Timothy Wilkerson, known as Prodigy, Gray, Griffin, Mr. Gideon, and Mess. While they were rescued by the Hulk from a Hulk AI and later depowered, I would say that at their height they could stand a chance against a more classic Avengers roster. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving us a thumbs up? Number 9, Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts might not be as good at teamwork in some cases, but they are definitely more interesting than the Avengers when it comes to their story, and despite being initially made up secretly of a group of villains led by Baron Zemo, the public even came to accept them as heroes. Over the years, their lineup has changed dramatically, and currently they are actually more of a mishmash of like less heroic folks and more heroic folks, although the fact remains that the Thunderbolts has always remained a more heroic, at least at heart, or at least anti-hero based team. One of their current members also happens to be Spectrum, aka Monica Rambeau, who is known for packing a punch. Number 8, Titans 3. Titans 3 is a group that is similar but different to another one I had on part 1 of my list. It is basically the Defenders, sort of, but also may predate the Defenders, I believe, in terms of their appearance. The Titans 3 only appeared in a couple of issues of Submariner back in the 70s, making their first appearance in issue number 34 and their last in issue number 35. This team was led by Namor the Submariner and was brought together to save the world, as many great superhero teams have been brought together in the past. Joining Namor were the Hulk and the Silver Surfer, so no Doctor Strange here, but still a very powerful team I think, even with only 3 of them. Number 7, Star Masters. Probably not a team you get to hear about often, I'd think, on YouTube, so let me get you up to speed here. Star Masters were brought together by the accusation that Quasar was guilty of murder, having believed to have massacred basically a bunch of people on a starship. Those that made up the team were the ones who believed him to be innocent. I also just love Wendell Vaughn and feel like we don't really get to talk about him too much on the channel for how powerful he is. Probably because Wendell, aka Quasar, isn't super prominent in the comics anymore these days, especially not Wendell as Quasar, because now we also have Avril. However, Wendell has appeared in the Guardians of the Galaxy series in recent years. While Quasar was obviously on the team, so was Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Morphex, and Zenith. After Quasar was proven innocent, the team became more focused on maintaining peace throughout the cosmos, basically like OP cosmic peacekeepers, which I also just love as a team idea. Number 6, Transformers. Well, it's weird to think of the Transformers as a Marvel team, since, you know, they are with Hasbro. Marvel also happens to be the place where they kind of got their comic book start. And recently, IDW did lose the rights to the comics for Transformers. Although it's lucky for Marvel, and I do love their work, it is a little sad because I was also actually interested in the IDW Transformers stuff, which I guess I could go back and read. Or well, I guess they can't reprint it, so I'd have to find old stuff. Oh well. I'm sure there's still lots of awesome stuff in store in the future for Transformers comics, no matter who the rights belong to, because they're just a really cool property. And either way, the team will remain unstoppable. I'm still waiting for an Avengers vs Transformers event, so hopefully that is something we could also see in the future.
At number 5 is Blue Marvel. A very underrated and underdiscussed hero given his power levels, Blue Marvel has a stint as an Avenger, and no one really talks about it. Known to be as powerful as Thor and the Hulk, Blue Marvel has redirected enormous asteroids single-handedly, as well as sending Sentry into space with one punch. But he isn't known only for his brute strength. His matter manipulation is equally powerful and impressive, giving him the ability to transmute matter at a molecular level and harness antimatter at will. This makes him an excellent support member to the Avengers as well, giving him the ability to heal the wounds of his allies. And let's be honest, a hero adept with molecular manipulation powers doesn't often also have the strength to one-shot Ultimate Hulk or three-shot King Hyperion and contend against the Avengers after just returning from a 40-year retirement. Nor do they have Reed Richards saying that they might be 3 times smarter than Doctor Doom. But Blue Marvel does. He has all of this under his belt. There's just nobody out there quite like him. Other than maybe the guy who sits in our number 4 slot, Sentry. Although he is known to be one of the more troubled and self-sabotaging heroes in the Marvel Universe, Sentry's insane power levels and diverse power set still rank him at our number 4 slot on this list. Much like Blue Marvel, Sentry has Hulk-like strength as well as transmutation abilities, except he also deals with psionic energy as well as light manipulation. And he can also regenerate his molecules from nothing, meaning that he will always exist unless someone finds a very crafty way of combating or undoing this ability. The only caveat to all this is that Sentry has this evil alter ego called the Void, who is known to be even more powerful than he is, and is known as the being to have destroyed Asgard in the Siege storyline. And even though Sentry has struggled with mental illness causing his abilities and heroic feats to be rather inconsistent, the fact of the matter is that Sentry is one of the most powerful heroes in the universe, not just the Avengers. At number 3 we have the one and only God of Thunder, Thor. These top 3 were tough for me to rank because they're such popular and fluctuating characters in both the comics and the MCU, but it's fair to say that Thor takes a spot in the top 3 based on his insane influence on the Avengers as well as his sheer power potential. Originally known to be the only other being in the Marvel Universe to contend with the Hulk, Thor has only grown stronger over the years, with plenty of other heroes filling the gap between him and the Worldbreaker. And some of these feats that he has attained have been due to his extremely lengthy existence, having been a practicing warrior for millennia. Using his belt of strength and his hammer Mjolnir, Thor is also one of the best equipped heroes in the universe. He is powerful enough to resist the gravitational pull of a neutron star, knock out the Phoenix Force with one blow, and famously take out Mangog and Thanos in back-to-back fights. I could stand here and pretend to convince you. The real fans know that the only argument here is that maybe Thor could be placed even higher on the list. That would only knock out our number 2 spot, Scarlet Witch, and I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, because this hero is just an absolute powerhouse for the Avengers. She is the daughter of Magneto, or maybe not, as of recently, but I liked it better when she was, and she possesses an extremely dangerous and powerful set of magical abilities. Known to be able to manipulate reality on a cosmic scale, Scarlet Witch's powers have grown exponentially since her introduction in the X-Men number 4 in 1964. She has famously eliminated the powers of 99% of all mutants with one whisper during the House of M storyline, which is an absolutely insane feat of power. But she's also shown that she's possibly capable of creating whole universes on command, which brings her to yet another crazy level of power. Some people might argue to put her further back on the list because of her volatility as a hero, or arguably an anti-hero, but I honestly think that her powers are just too impressive to be outweighed by her struggles to control them. In fact, I almost put her at number 1, but the top spot had to go to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange started off as a character that might not have presented as much of a powerhouse, but over time he has proven himself to be the most valuable member that the Avengers have ever had. He is capable of bending time and space on command with adept precision and can detect threats from extreme distances in space and time before they even occur. And if you take issue with this number 1 placement, just think of the scale of the forces he's faced with within his own storylines. He has to protect the world from the likes of Dormammu, Nightmare, and Yurthona, among many other godlike demons. But what really makes Doctor Strange the most powerful out of all the Avengers is that he doesn't need to contend with opposition on the plane of reality that they come to him in. He is able to view the future and decide on how he wants it to play out before changing the fabric of reality to control any outcome he's faced with. The only reason that I could imagine someone might keep him from the #1 spot these days is that he's known to have been nerfed quite a bit in the last 20 years, but even today I'd still argue that his power set puts him in the top spot.
Number 10, Alpha Flight. This might be a controversial way to start off this list, but I truly do believe that Alpha Flight can be more powerful than the Avengers team, especially if we're talking about consistent teamwork, which the Avengers members sometimes struggle with due to, well, butting heads with each other. I mean, people on the Avengers have straight up killed their other teammates before. That is just a fact. I mean, I did a whole list about the amount of times Iron Man has been basically killed by his teammates, and after talking it over with Andrew, it seems like Alpha Flight also has a better system in place for making sure their team not only works smoothly, but also that members are well trained before even earning their place on the team due to the existence of both Beta Flight and Gamma Flight, which were initially used as training teams. Although Gamma Flight has kind of become something else in recent years, but yes. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving this video a little like? Click that thumbs up. Number 9, Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is basically Marvel's main magical team. At least currently, that's who we got. Midnight Suns typically deal with threats that are more mystical or supernatural in nature. They were brought together initially by Doctor Strange to fight against Lilith and her small army of demonic offspring known as the Lilin, which, I mean, of course this team would be brought together by Doctor Strange, right? Each member of the original team roster had interacted with the Lilin before, which was what tied them all together. Team members and leaders have included Doctor Strange, Wong, Blade, Morbius, Magic, Nico Minoru, Wolverine, Zoe Laveau, Kushala, Dr. Voodoo, Elsa Bloodstone, multiple Ghost Riders, Hannibal King, Hellstrom, Iron Fist, Man-Thing, Jennifer Kale, Ben Reilly, Victoria Montesi, and Werewolf by Night. It's a lot of supernatural and mystical people. Number 8, Web Warriors. The Web Warriors are a fantastic multiversal team that spun out of the events of Spider-Verse. But even before they existed in the comics, they and the Spider-Verse were inspired by the team-ups of multiversal Spider-Man in the 90s Spider-Man animated series. The Web Warriors were brought together by the multiversal threat of the Inheritors, who hunted down various alternate spider people, known as Spider Totems, across the Marvel multiverse. After they were defeated during the Spider-Verse event and the dust had settled, the Web Warriors were created to defend those worlds, who were left afterwards without a hero. Considering how powerful Peter Parker's Spider-Man is, I think you can understand how a team made up of various alternate versions of the character would be off the charts when it comes to their power level. I mean, Spider-Man himself is pretty crazy, like a team of Spider-Men. I wish we had an Avengers team that was actually just like different spider people. That could be pretty cool. Number 7, Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four, despite being often smaller in number, though they have expanded beyond that number over the years, is still mightier, I'd say, than the Avengers. But I also feel like that's to be expected. After all, the FF were one of the first Marvel teams and are referred to fondly as Marvel's first family. So if anything, I consider them kind of like the first team. The Fantastic Four usually is made up of the 4 initial friends and relatives who are forever changed by exposure to cosmic rays during their first voyage out into space. At least that's the original origin story. The team has had countless heroes join their ranks here and there over the years. Well, you know Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing. Some other members on the FF roster have included the Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, Storm, She-Hulk, Nova, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur, Crystal, and Black Panther, among others. Number 6, The Quiet Council. They aren't really a team of superheroes, but the title of this video is simply Marvel Teams More Powerful Than the Avengers, and The Quiet Council, I would consider them to be a team still. They're a team of folks in the Marvel universe. Granted, their team is more about protecting their power and their nation of Krakoa, but hey, I think it still counts. The Krakoan Quiet Council as such is composed of not just mutant superheroes, but mutant villains as well, as Krakoa is said to be a place for all mutants, where past misdeeds are forgiven in the name of creating a better tomorrow and a safe haven for all mutants. Current members include some of the most prominent, iconic, and powerful mutants in all of existence: Destiny, Hope Summers, Storm, Exodus, Professor X, Emma Frost, Mr. Sinister, Captain Kate Pryde, Mystique, and Sebastian Shaw. Formerly, the Council also featured such additional powerhouses as Apocalypse, Magneto, and Jean Grey, besides.
Number 5. Devil Dinosaur. Okay, look, he ain't on the team at all really, but he did kind of help them unintentionally, and I also really want to talk about this dino since I haven't before, so Devil Dinosaur! He's basically just a big, red, intelligent T-Rex from another universe. Not intelligent enough to talk or anything, but he understands the situations he's in, can understand human language, and even has some telepathic connection with certain characters. As for the Savage Avengers, in Volume 2, Issue 2, the Savage heroes have been sent back in time to the Hyborian era, and they end up fighting Devil Dinosaur in a coliseum. That is, until they kind of not really work together to bust out of there. He doesn't have many powers other than super intelligence and strength, but he is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which I can imagine is very helpful. Number 4. Wolverine. This mutant needs almost no introduction, being one of the most recognizable characters in Marvel's lineup. James Logan Howlett is a long-lived Canadian mutant with the rage of a beast and the soul of a samurai. His mysterious past is filled with blood, war, and betrayal, creating one of the greatest characters Marvel has ever made. If you don't already know his powers, Wolverine has an accelerated healing factor, keenly enhanced senses, and bone claws in each hand, which were improved upon when his whole skeleton, including the claws, were coated in adamantium, one of the hardest metals on Earth. This rage-filled samurai mutant Canadian joined up with the Savage Avengers in 2020 to help fight against Cool and Gath, and he's honestly a great addition to every team he joins. So let's hear some love for Wolverine! Yeah! Woo! Okay. Moving on. Number 3. The Venom Symbiote. I say specifically the symbiote because at this time Eddie Brock and Venom were having a bit of a rough period and had separated from each other for the time being. At least that's what I've gathered from reading. Either way, alerted to the suffering of another member of his species at the hands of Cool and Gath, the Venom symbiote arrived where the future Savage Avengers were at to help Logan, the Punisher, Elektra, and Dr. Voodoo fight the eldritch god Cool and Gath was trying to summon. Exposure to the god's cosmic radiation caused the Venom symbiote to take on the form of a massive dragon, letting it hold its own against the god in combat. The symbiote would do its best to help in the fight, saving the other members of its species in the process. But he's Venom! We all know how cool he is. I don't really have to explain this to you. I hope. Number 2. Dagger. When her boyfriend Rob left for college, Tandy Bowen, a 16-year-old girl who grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, left home on a bus for New York City. While wandering the streets, a man tried to mug her, but she was rescued by Tyrone Johnson, a fellow runaway teen. She bought Tyrone food and the two grew to care about each other. But when a guy named Simon Marshall rounded up a bunch of the city's teen runaways offering them food and shelter, Tandy agreed to go, being kind of naive. And Tyrone went with her because he wanted to protect Tandy, which was good, because Tyrone was right to be suspicious. The runaway teens were knocked unconscious by Marshall's men and injected with an experimental substance. The two were the only teens who survived and soon developed powers. For Tandy, she can generate a form of living light, which is actually life force that she uses, most commonly, in the form of psionic light daggers, which travel wherever she wills them and which drain living beings of life force. Her light daggers also have the capacity to cure certain persons of substance addiction, which is an interesting side effect. Tandy can also project her light into Cloak's dimension to feed his quote-unquote hunger. She's unharmed when traveling through his dimension and can pass this protection to others, which leads me to the next spot. Number 1. Cloak. Tyrone Johnson is the dark half of the vigilante duo known as Cloak and Dagger. After a substance-related experiment awakened his powers, he became a living personification of darkness. Tyrone grew up in South Boston and had a really bad stuttering condition, which inadvertently caused him to be unable to save his friend's life. Tyrone ran away from the home because of the guilt of that, and he ended up in New York City's ports, desperate for food and searching for someone to rob. Instead, he found Tandy Bowen, another runaway, and ironically prevented her from being robbed. They eventually were subjected to the experimental substance that caused them to gain their powers. For Cloak, he has the ability to manipulate dark force energy and access the dimension that it comes from, which he uses to do things like creating localized fields of impenetrable darkness, creating mobile, solid tendrils of darkness, hiding in shadows, becoming intangible, pulling people into the dark force dimension, trapping them there, and teleporting himself himself and others by taking an interdimensional shortcut through the Dark Force dimension. Clearly, very useful. Coming in at number 10 is Captain America. No, Captain America is not near the top of the power hierarchy of Avenger heroes. Not by a long shot. But it's not his power that makes him unstoppable. It's his willpower. Captain America just never gives up or backs down when he believes in what he is fighting for. This is one of the big reasons that Steve Rogers has been the leading man of the Avengers. That and his genius tactical mind and his leadership skills. Almost all the Marvel heroes and even some of the Marvel villains will shut up and listen when Captain America speaks, even when those heroes and villains are leagues and bounds above Steve in terms of their power. In addition to all that, Captain America is one of the longest lasting and most popular of the Marvel heroes, and that fact also lends him some points in the unstoppability factor on the publishing side of Marvel heroes. But on top of all of that, Captain America is one hell of a fighter and is incredibly tough with his super soldier serum, bringing him to the very tippy top of the human conditioning and making him a physically perfect human, which has allowed him to withstand some pretty brutal attacks, being frozen in ice for decades, and has virtually stopped his aging. And at number 9 is Spider-Man. Just like Captain America, Spider-Man has the absolute god level of power known as popularity. He is essentially the face of Marvel Comics, and almost everyone who just knows of comic books knows of Spider-Man. Sure, Spider-Man has been defeated and even lost his life, like how he is technically currently not alive, but he always comes back, and there is a very low possibility that he will ever be brought down for good. Plus, now we have Miles Morales as well, who is going to share this spot on the list, even if he's got a few abilities that Peter doesn't have. Spider-Man has got more than popularity though. He is also very inspiring, actually really strong, and incredibly intelligent. He is seen and respected as one of the most righteous and brave heroes around, and his heroic attitude, sense of responsibility, almost perfect moral compass, and quick wit make him beloved by not only fans but other heroes and even some villains. But above all of that, it's his willpower that I think makes him truly unstoppable. Even in the face of certain death, Spider-Man will always get back to his feet, which has allowed him to use his incredible abilities to perform truly incredible feats. Speaking of his powers, Spider-Man possesses the proportional powers of a spider, but he's done things that even a human-sized spider would not be able to do, and his spider sense gives him an edge in battle, and that combined with his other abilities has made him next to unstoppable. And at number 8 is Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm another person. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the Burstein process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he exceeded this, and his strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's even been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match, but what most know him for is his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue is about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York City, Luke Cage is the bulwark. And at number 7 is Wolverine. Of course, an overly aggressive and angry Canadian will make this list. An angry Canadian is already such a rare occurrence that they have to be pretty strong, and Wolverine definitely is. Most people are well aware of Wolverine's abilities thanks to Hugh Jackman, but I am honor-bound to explain them anyways. There are 2 things that make Wolverine practically unstoppable. The first would be his adamantium lace skeleton and by extension, his claws. While not a natural occurrence, Wolverine was subjected to the Weapon X program, and for him, he was given the adamantium which bonded to his skeleton, infusing it with his bones, which makes them virtually unbreakable. It also makes his claws razor sharp and gives him added weight and velocity when throwing punches and kicks. Now, if someone were to ever break his bones, which is pretty much impossible, it wouldn't really matter because one of his natural mutations is a healing factor that is only outmatched by a few other characters in the Marvel Universe. His healing factor has allowed him to survive a nuclear explosion, being completely crushed by a steamroller, having his heart torn out, brutal and bloody fights with Sabretooth. He has even recovered from a single drop of blood, but he was being powered up at that time. His skeleton and his healing factor are just compounded by incredible senses, superhuman attributes, and general tough guy attitude to make him a pretty unstoppable member of the Avengers and more. In at number 6 is Ghost Rider. Everybody loves Ghost Rider. Doesn't matter who it is, a flaming skull and a flaming mount is just always cool. But not only is he really cool, he's quite a hardy fella. He is essentially impervious to almost all forms of normal damage, or the damage he has sustained, like having his head completely obliterated, didn't actually matter since he just instantly reformed it and didn't even feel it. The Ghost Rider has tanked hits from the Hulk on multiple different occasions and was one of the main heroes called in when Hulk returned for his vengeance on the Illuminati. Since his body becomes a flaming skeleton, most projectiles just pass straight through him or bounce off of his incredibly strong bones. The only things that have ever been shown to actually hurt him are heaven-forged or blessed weapons. Also, because of the divine or demonic energies that empower him, he can basically feel no fatigue or pain of any kind, and if anything were to actually damage him, he can recover from his injuries insanely quickly, almost instantly. But all that combined with his hellfire, soul, and sim manipulation, demonic magic, fallible penance stare, and other insane abilities makes Ghost Rider someone who most villains, and even heroes, fear even on their best days.
Okay, at number 5 is Black Panther. T'Challa is not to be messed with, and it's not just because most of his gear is outfitted with all the vibranium anyone could ever hope for. He's also got a level of dexterity and stealth that brings his combat abilities to another level. This could be seen in the comics when he's able to take down Namor not once, but twice, or when he also finds a way to take out the Silver Surfer, which is an insanely impressive feat on its own. But what puts Black Panther above Iron Man for me is that he's got a similar intellect and employs it almost more impressively at times. He's able to create similarly ingenious pieces of technology to start, and much of the time totally on the fly. Like the one time when he creates a device on the spot that blocks Thanos' synapses in his mind, knocking him out there and then, at least for a time. But this is a big moment that shouldn't be ignored. Considering he's capable of this level of technological aptitude, and he's a superpowered being on top of it, it just gives him that extra edge over Iron Man for me. And that comes from a huge Iron Man stan. Although Black Panther is in my top 3 as well. At number 4 we have Hercules. I want to acknowledge that Ares could also easily hold this spot, but I figured that the list only had room for one Greek god. And having been teased in Thor Love and Thunder's post-credit sequence, it's looking like Hercules is set to appear in an upcoming MCU project, and it's about time. Hercules is one of the few characters that has ever been able to contend on an even keel as Thor, which I think speaks to how powerful he is in the comics. Son of the god of lightning, Zeus, Hercules is known as the god of strength, which should be enough to put him on this list to begin with. But what could also convince you would be, I don't know, that one time when he picks up all of Manhattan while facing off against Thor, or the time when he destroys the Thor clone in Civil War, which acts as a turning point for Cap's army. If that's not enough to convince you though, Hercules is also known to run at speeds above 100 miles per hour. Even though most people associate Hercules with Greek mythology, he has a very lengthy run with the Avengers and proves himself as one of their most powerful members ever. At number 3 is Nova. Being basically the protector of the cosmos, Richard Rider's Nova had to make it into the top 20. Being one of the primary members of the intergalactic law enforcement agency, Nova brings a cosmic level of power to the Avengers. And the main ability that really puts him above the rest is his power absorption, which is capable of using an enemy's power against them. And the limits of this power are yet to be truly maxed out, meaning that I'm not sure if we can even know the extent of his power level quite yet. But considering he's been able to weaponize gravity itself with this ability, I'd say there aren't even really limits at all. Of course, when he takes in power, it has to go somewhere, and it's usually emitted as a highly powerful energy beam that can be aimed at any nearby or distant targets. In prime form, he's also been known to travel at near light speeds, which is verging on speedster level. One of his most notable feats is when he sacrifices himself by trapping himself and Thanos in the Cancerverse. This just shows his immense influence and how far he'd go as a protector of not only Earth, but the cosmos as a whole. At number 2 is Gilgamesh. You know that at least one of the Eternals had to make it onto this list, so here he is. Gilgamesh doesn't have a long run as part of the Avengers, but the short time he gives to them is enough to put him nice and high up on this list. Now, most superheroes tend to have superhuman strength and land somewhere on the scale measured in the amount of tons they can lift usually, but we can basically just throw that scale in the garbage because Gilgamesh is off the charts in his strength stat. His strength level is on par with that of Hercules and Thor, only maybe being usurped by the Hulk himself. But on top of his extreme strength level, he is also capable of flight, energy blasts, and a certain level of energy manipulation, which, when all paired together, makes for a massive powerhouse who beats out many of the other members of the Avengers. Finally, at number 1 is a hero who could have arguably made the part 1 of this video, Captain Marvel. Born as a human, Carol Danvers' DNA is fused with Kree genes, thus turning her into a next level superpowered being. Being able to fly 6 times the speed of sound and having an adept energy manipulation skill, there's no wonder why Captain Marvel is considered one of the most valuable members to ever grace the Avengers. Whether she's destroying asteroids with a single punch or surviving an HLA energy bomb, Captain Marvel seems to be everywhere at once. And she sort of can be, given her insane speed and near omniscience with her flash precognition ability. This power allows her to anticipate events all across the cosmos from wherever she is, which is part of what makes her stand out as one of the foremost protectors of the cosmos. It's also just really helpful in anticipating the moves of her opponents before they make them. And although she does acquire this power when she's turned into binary, there are still remnants of it within her to this day.